Hey everyone, we're just getting everything going here with our live stream. Like all of us at the moment, first time for everything. So we're learning on the go, just like we've all been doing this week at school. And here we go. Can you see it? So we are live right now from Melbourne, Australia, and today we are talking all about teaching Ensemble online. So many of you listening out there, whether you're in Australia or somewhere else in the world, have probably been doing this either for the first couple of weeks, or if you're in Victoria like me, school has just started over the last couple of days, and we are all in the midst of working out how we teach our ensembles online. Now, many people tuned into my webinar last week that I did with AMEB, which you can find a link to in the videos on the Conducting Artistry page. And we wanted to use today to ask some questions that had not been answered in that short time that we had on the AMEB webinar. So we're going to start with a few technical questions. Now, lots of people have asked about the different platforms on which you can hold, whether it's ensemble rehearsals or instrumental lessons. And my first response to this would be to make sure that you use whatever is the platform that your school wants you to use as the first port of call. So different schools are using different things. Some schools are using Zoom, some schools are using Microsoft Teams. Other schools I know have been using Skype for instrumental lessons, and it really depends on what your school is doing, both with the platform itself and also about how they want you to teach your students. So some schools are being, we've got some people on one end of the spectrum that are all for all full-featured video conferencing, so you are live with your students. You can see your students' video, they can see your video, right through to other schools that are saying we're not going to have any synchronous teaching, which is us seeing each other at the same time, and saying that we're can only do things that are asynchronous or kind of offline, if you like, so they're not live, which would mean that us as teachers would be pre-recording videos or audio or just having written activities for our ensemble. So you might be at either end or anywhere in that spectrum of different ways that you're going to be able to communicate with your students. So that's something you have to bear in mind with what activities you're going to be working on with your students, and how, you know, keeping in mind the mode of delivery while you are thinking about what platform you're using. A couple of questions that we've had from people have been, how can I work on ensemble skills like listening with my students or listening to other people as they're playing when we know from the technology that we can't have multiple people all playing at the same time. So what we do know is that if you are using live video conferencing, we can have at least one person with sound going at any one time. And that does work as long as we get everyone else to listen to that one person and fit in together. So an example of that could be the conductor, could be the person that has the live sound going on. So you might be, for example, if you're getting the ensemble to play a melody and just work on playing in time with each other to a melody, you could be playing along the melody on your instrument and then have all the students with their sound off playing along with you. Now, obviously you can't hear whether or not they're in time with you, so like they might be out of time or they might be perfectly in time, and so that will be about getting the students to give feedback of, did they think that they were playing along in time with you, or do they want to do it again? So a lot of it is going to mean that we're going to have to ask questions in a different way. The whole process of the way we normally teach is going to be quite a bit slower, because one of the things you might have noticed is that on these platforms it's quite easy for people to talk over the top of each other. So just kind of allowing time for, if you're asking a question, for those responses to come back is going to be really important. Another way that you can use that one person creating sound and the other people playing alongside of it is to get a student to play along and get all of the other students to play with that other student. And you could use this not just for internal pulse or playing in time, but also use this as an opportunity for them to mimic any other part of a student's playing. So you might ask a student, okay, we're going to play this tune that we know, or a scale or a phrase, and John in the trumpets is going to choose what dynamic shape he does for that phrase, and we're all going to copy John playing that dynamic shape. Or it might be Britta in the clarinets is going to choose what articulation we use for this scale or this melody, and we're all going to practice exactly how Britta articulates that scale. So that's going to get your students to really carefully listen to other students. And it doesn't have to be complex. It's going to give your students that real intense hone-in listening experience that we could also mimic by doing this activity in a normal rehearsal, and get them listening, not just feeling like they're all alone in their particular bubble. And kind of, if you were doing an activity like that, making sure that you pass that leadership baton, if you like, around the ensemble will also help lots of different students feel like they're being engaged and utilised in the rehearsal. And particularly as we get to doing this in, this is all new for everyone, this would be a good opportunity to, I think, call on those students that you know are confident, you know are probably going to have a go of that in this completely unknown new platform. Use them as the first ones, the ones that you know are going to be confident to put their hand up and try, because that's going to then give a signal to those kind of less confident, maybe those more introverted students, that it'll go okay and that they can have a turn as well. And I think that this whole situation where we are teaching online is also an opportunity to re-engage with those students who maybe are the quiet ones that sit back, that they don't really put up their hand. Obviously, we have lots of different teaching techniques that we could normally use in our normal rehearsal to kind of engage those students and get them to be a part of the conversation. But for some of them, they might actually feel more comfortable in this setting because they're sitting by themselves at home. They don't have other kids around them being kind of loud or distracting. So you might actually find that some of those students who are a bit more on the back foot do actually have a chance in this setting to be more engaged and a bit more active in your rehearsal, because this feels like a bit of a safer space for them than perhaps a big ensemble rehearsal. So we'd love to know who is out there listening to the live stream right now. So if you are online, just make sure that you put your name in the comments and tell us where you're from. If you've just joined us, we're live and talking about online ensemble teaching. And we've just been discussing ways that we can get our students to listen and practice their listening skills while they are in online rehearsals. Now, our first discussion point was about doing that in a live video conferencing setting, but you could equally do that activity in an asynchronous way, so not in live real time with your students, if that's the platform that you are required to use. And that would be as simple as you recording a video of yourself playing your instrument and asking the students to play along with you. And you could do those examples of, I'm going to change the articulation and I want you to copy exactly what I do, or change the dynamics, copy exactly what I do, change the character of the way that you're playing. So you might say, okay, I'm going to play a particular character right now. Okay, and get the student to mimic everything about you, because one of the great things that these video platforms do is that we can really concentrate on the physical side of our performing. We're seeing some hellos there from people watching the stream. Hi, Kit. Hi, Catherine. Great to have you along. As we're going along, if you've got any questions, please jump in and ask them. Hi, Lauren. We've got Lauren in Tamworth, Gunnedah. Fantastic, Lauren. Hope that you're having a good time over there. Oh, we've got Maddie Foley. Hi, Maddie. Awesome. So a lot of these activities, regardless of whatever mode it is that you're delivering, can actually be adapted to the different modes. So just as we were talking about earlier, if you've just joined us, we were talking about you playing along either live or on a recorded video and getting the students to practice playing in time with you. You could also get students to submit videos and either manually pair up different students or pick a couple of students each week to say, okay, Ben in the saxophone section is going to record F major scale today or this week, and this week's practice task is to play along F major scale with Ben in the way that Ben plays it. And you can ask your students to specifically listen out for different things like intonation, articulation, rhythm. And I've got a post on YouTube, which I'll put a link to afterwards, about 26 different ways that your students can play scales. And I've also made some flashcards using Quizlet, which is a fantastic online flashcards tool. So that could be something that you even give your students the Quizlet flashcards and say, pick, 2 different variations or 2 different ways that you're going to play scales. And then another student is going to have to copy what you did. So they're really still kind of getting this interactive thing. You can try and do it live. I've got Leanne from Wollongong saying hi, Lisa from Cairns, fantastic. That you can get students to feel like they're doing stuff with each other. The different online platforms are kind of different in different ways about how much interaction students can have on the platform. So I know right now my school is using Microsoft Teams, and I have not yet had a rehearsal, so I have not yet got to the point of being able to explore all of the different features that require you to have lots of people on board to check if they work or to work them out. But I know that on Zoom, if you are running a rehearsal on Zoom, a fantastic feature is the breakout rooms. So what that means is if you've got, say, 30 students online in a rehearsal with you, you can either randomly or manually allocate students to different breakout rooms. So if you were doing it manually, you could put all of your sections in separate rooms. And what that will mean is that they'll have their own little Zoom window. What happens is when you get on there, it will open up with just those people that are in that breakout room in the call. They can do whatever activity you set them. Again, you could have one student being the leader or the player. We've got hi Tamara from Wagga and Sally and Lance. Fantastic. Welcome aboard. So you can get the students in these breakout rooms and get them to do an activity, and then you can also put text announcements through those breakout rooms. It's called a broadcast, and you'll see that as the host of the meeting, you're the only one that can do that, and that message will go to all the breakout rooms. And if you want to bring everyone back together again, you can do end breakout rooms, and then it will give them a 60-second countdown. And when it gets to the end of the 60 seconds, it will send all the students back to the big meeting to do something together. And we've got Scott from Sydney, fantastic. We've got a question here from Kit. What activities can we give younger students that parents will be able to help the students with? Kit, can you give us a bit more information? Are you thinking kind of ensemble activities or general instrumental activities? What kind of things do you want your students to be doing? Give us a bit more. Would love to answer your question. While we're waiting for Kit to get back to us, I think that one of the things that's that Kit has brought up is this idea of parents. And I know that probably lots of the people that are listening right now are parents themselves and are in the process of having this fascinating experience of being working perhaps full-time in the house while your students are also trying to do school in the house and playing loud musical instruments while mum or dad are trying to do Zoom meetings and Zoom conversations is another challenge and something that we have to consider for our students, that, you know, there's lots of other things going on in the house. And so it might be that there is actually limited playing possibility for your students. And so that's worth actually asking your students up front. I've got my first ensemble session next week. And one of the first things we're going to be doing is just checking in with everyone and finding out what is their situation at home, what can they do, what can't they do, what's going to be possible in this situation for them, so that we make something that's actually going to be valuable for everyone, and so that we don't have kids sitting there that either just check out of the class altogether, don't turn up, or, you know, feel like they can't really do anything because, you know, mum or dad's on the other side of the wall and said you're not allowed to play your tuba right now. Okay, so Kit said general instrumental activities for a student aged around 9 or 11. So I think some great activities would be getting your young student to have a go at playing along by something really simple by ear. So even little tunes that they know or they might have done when they started off playing their instrument, can they play those tunes without the music? Because what we know from research is that if we want to be able to play with our instrument with the music, which is what most of us do just about all the time, but we also want to be able to play with our instrument without the music, and also without the music without the instrument. And also, where is the last variation that I haven't said yet? But all these combinations of with music or without instrument, with or without instrument. And, you know, one way that you could get the parents to help the kid out is you could give the parents a list of maybe some kind of common childhood songs or nursery rhymes, like Incy Wincy Spider, Twinkle Twinkle, Mary Had a Little Lamb, really, really simple ones, because we want students to experience success and say, you know, mum or dad, your job is to pick what song your child is going to learn by ear, and then they've got to come and give you a performance, because that's also going to give the students a performing experience. Okay, you've got, you know, today your job is to work out how to play whatever is the song by ear. And if the student does that really quickly, then mum and dad, their next question could be, can you play that same song but starting on a different note? So then your students are also getting the experience of having a go at transposing, which if they've got if they can play a chromatic scale over one octave, they'll probably be able to play any of those little nursery rhyme tunes that only take up, you know, about an octave or less. They should be able to do that in a couple of different keys from a couple of different starting notes. I hope that answers your question a little bit, Kit. Scott Ryan has asked, do you have any tips or thoughts on how to make ensemble learning online at the tertiary level acceptable to uni students? Well, I know that there are definitely lots of interesting conversation going on with tertiary students at the moment. Lots of memes going on about the fact that we all learn from Zoom University, and you know, everyone is now suddenly learning the same thing. I think it comes back to that first, something that we mentioned a little bit earlier about trying to ask the students what they want and what they need. And I think this is what we have to do as educators ourselves is, we're operating with this framework, which is not what we normally do. We know that it's not optimal, but we can teach a lot of the things that we do in Ensemble and that we work on in Ensemble through this method, just in a different way than we normally do. So to ask the students themselves, well, why do you come to Ensemble? Like, what do you get out of Ensemble? And hopefully it's not just for the uni students that Scott is asking about. Hopefully it's not just I get credit or I had to do an Ensemble elective, but to think about what are the things that Ensemble is giving to me. And some of that might be the social connection with other people. When you're at uni, often it's very siloed into particular studios. So being able to interact with people in a different studio. So I would actually put the ball back in the students' court to say, well, if you're kind of don't think this is acceptable right now, what would make it acceptable? And ask them to be creative, ask them to come up with some solutions, because many of the students that are in our uni ensembles we know are going to be future educators. So we're really doing the right thing by them by asking them to come up with creative solutions for us being able to learn how to do all these things together. We've got Lance asking, how can we quickly put like instruments into breakout rooms? I found with little time in the rehearsal, I found I was just assigning random rooms. It didn't really work as the lags varied between computers. Yeah, I have not found a quick way yet to allocate those breakout rooms, and I don't believe that there's a way that you can, Lance, pre-set them up so that every time you have that meeting again with that group of people, it will put them back in the room. So it does take a little bit of time. So that might be something to be mindful of, that, you're just going to have to build in some time for that. And that might also maybe help you think about how often you want to split into those breakout rooms, because you're going to have to go through that process of, it does take time to populate everyone into the breakout rooms, and then there's that 1 minute countdown when they come back. So if you're only doing something that's going to last, a couple of minutes, you might want to rethink how often you're putting people into the breakout rooms and then bringing them back together again, because there's going to be all of this kind of fudge time in between. The other thing that you could do, because I know that there are some people on the call right now, if you've just joined us, we're talking all about teaching Ensemble online, and we're talking about using breakout rooms in Zoom. There are people on the call that I know are working with community ensembles. So certainly if you were trying to run breakout rooms in community ensembles and you wanted people to be in that group and in that activity for kind of a long time, you could certainly get the adults to set up their own Zoom call with their section and just get them to manage that group themselves, and then kind of come back to the main call, then have a call where the whole ensemble is for the whole ensemble call. Could be something that you could do to kind of mitigate some of that putting people into breakout rooms time. I know that the Zoom people are kind of working on new stuff all the time. So I read an article the other day that, their product has obviously gone absolutely mental and skyrocketed. So I know that they're trying to add new features and make it better for people every waking minute. Some more questions here from Leanne. Do you have ideas regarding mid to long-term planning and goal setting, that given that a live performance won't happen anytime soon? Fantastic question, Leanne. We are all stuck in this crazy place of not knowing what is going to happen and how long we are going to be like this for. I don't know if you saw the news this afternoon, but Scott Morrison has said that, we're going to be here in Australia. We're going to be here for at least another 4 weeks in the social distancing and stay-at-home regime that we've been doing for a while. And I know that for at least us in Victoria, school is kind of going to be online for the whole of term 2, but term 3 and term 4 are really up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen. So I think what I'm going to be doing with my students is, again, putting the ball in their court and asking them, what do you want to do, knowing that we have term 2 is definitely an amount of time that we can plan, 10 weeks for us, 11 weeks. So we can put in place as an ensemble a 10-week plan of what we want to achieve as a group. Like, I'm going to ask the students, do you want to do a performance where everyone records their video part, like you might have seen on a cappella, and other people have put it together using Photoshop? Do you want to do one of those multi-view performances? Because if you do, I'm willing to put in the time and use student talent as well to put in the time to edit it together. But if it's not something that they're interested in, then I don't want to kind of go and put all my eggs in that basket if they're not going to be enthused by it. Beyond the end of term 2, I think one thing that we're going to have to keep in mind is probably lots of us that are in this conducting artistry community have probably been pretty diligent about planning out what your music is going to be for the whole year. And that's all gone down the toilet because the performances have been cancelled, or maybe they're going to happen in term 3, we don't know. But the biggest thing is that the progress we thought we would make in a normal rehearsal, we're not going to make this term at least. So I think one thing we have to keep in mind in our mid to long-term planning is to lower our expectations of how quickly the band is going to progress, at least in the normal way that we think. Now, there might be other things that are the things we kind of don't get time to do in normal band rehearsal. Like if you wanted to expose your students to lots of recordings and lots of listening activities, that often tends to be one of the things that gets pushed to the bottom of the list. Well, this is a great time to do that. And so your students might actually progress a lot faster than they normally would in that particular area over this time. But the general kind of progression and development, I think, of our ensembles, particularly if you're working in a school and you've got students that are tracking along to then go up to the next ensemble or whatever it might be, that's going to be slower. So if you had, for example, one of the groups that I'm working with, they're probably about a grade 2, 2.5 in terms of ensemble music. And, my arc for the year was planning that in the end of term 3, which is when our ensemble year finishes, they were probably going to do maybe 1, maybe 2 grade 3 pieces. I know that that's definitely not going to happen now. I'm working on getting them to probably, if we can kind of be in this context, again, where they don't have the oral feedback coming back at them of other players in the ensemble, they just have way less to hang on to, that and we're asking them to be way more independent, even if we're trying to get the sessions to be really interactive. That, if I am going to put a piece in front of my group now in this context, I'm probably going to be giving them a 1.5 or a 2, because that's going to be skills that they can achieve. They can probably pretty all right play their part on their own and kind of get that up in the time that we have over this term in this particular context. So I think lowering expectations and setting up as much time as you can in terms of the mid-planning, and knowing that there's going to be a follow-on challenge to this. So, those students that you thought might go up to that next ensemble, well, maybe they will, but then that ensemble is not going to be able to play as complex things. They're not going to have worked on the skills that you normally would have had in your sequential progression. So I hope that kind of answered some of your question, Leanne. Feel free to give us some more info if that's useful. Scott's asking, are there any thoughts on how we can explore developing sight reading or sight singing for our students? Great question, Scott. And obviously that's something that we're all trying to do all the time. I have not used it yet, but from what I understand from a really large number of colleagues, there's a fantastic website called Sightreading Factory. And I believe that you can sign up as the teacher and choose and create sight reading exercises or sight singing exercises for your students and send them out. One of my colleagues at school just started using this and disseminating her exercises yesterday and said it's fantastic. And I believe that because of COVID-19, they're offering that as being free at the moment. We've just put the link up to Sightreading Factory in the box there. And that's certainly something I'm going to be exploring with my ensemble. Haven't gotten there yet. But that would be my first suggestion. The other thing you could do as a sight reading or sight singing exercise is get students, and this would work for your tertiary students, Scott, they might not like it, but it would work for them, is to get them to write a sight reading for an instrument. And that would also give them really great insight, and this would be at any level, about different instruments in the ensemble. So let's say you've got Nick on bassoon and Josh on trumpet, and you might say, okay, Josh, you're going to be writing sight reading for bassoon for Nick, and Nick, you're going to be writing sight reading for Josh on trumpet, and then they've got to talk to each other about what's the highest note you can play, what's the lowest note you can play, and then they've got to write each other, you know, a 4-bar or an 8-bar sight reading. And that could be a cool exercise that it might take a little while for the students to write the exercise, but then they could all be populated across the band, and then you would have a whole bunch of sight reading, and the students have worked on composition. You will be able to see whether the students, like how well they understand notation, and they could either do that just handwriting and submit a photo, or you could use an online music notation app like MuseScore, which is free and super easy and really easy to save as a PDF. And, you know, you could share all of that as sight reading for everyone, and that would be a quite quick way to get everyone to see a lot of sight reading. Or you could ask them, and this would be a good challenge for both the treble clef kids and the bass clef kids, and tell them you've got to write your sight reading exercise in both treble clef and bass clef. Now, that might be something for more advanced students, but certainly something that you could try. So if you've just joined us, we're here with a bunch of people from across Australia and the world, and we are talking about online ensemble teaching. I'm Ingrid Martin, and we've got a question from Sally, and Sally's asked, I've heard a cappella mentioned, haven't looked into it. So a cappella is the source of many of the videos that you would have seen that have got like a split screen with either one person playing 4 different instruments, sometimes multi kind of tracking themselves on one piece, or say multiple different people all playing different parts in the same piece of music or the same song. So what I understand from that app is that you can do, I think it's 4 or 9 separate parts in a cappella. But again, there's a free version of the app, which I think is called the classic version. And that's there's got some limitations on the length of the piece that you can record for that. And I think a limitation on the number of different kind of boxes you can have in the video. And then there's also a paid version. So definitely you could get your students to explore the free version and get them to maybe record a 4-part thing of themselves. That would be another way that you would still be testing ensemble skills. It would be less interactive than them doing it with, say, other students. But that's certainly a way that you could get students to work on their ensemble skills. Because let's say they record, line number 1, then they're going to put that in their headphones, or they'll have a metronome or a click track. They record line number 1, then they're going to listen to line number 1 while they're recording line number 2, and then either listen to 1 or 2 while they record 3 and then record 4. So to make those videos look and sound really good, they have to be really, really in time. So that's definitely going to test students' listening abilities. They'll also hear really quickly if the tuning is good or not. So that's another, again, these are all like ensemble skills, but they're basically being an ensemble themselves, with themselves. Another fantastic online resource that a colleague showed me yesterday is called BandLab. So this is an audio resource rather than a video resource, but I think it might actually be a fantastic alternative to something like a cappella, which looks very flashy. If you want to, just as a side note, if you want to do a video that's got like your whole band in it, like 30 or 40 different students, you've probably seen those videos on YouTube, you pretty much need a professional video editing program like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro to put something like that together, and they take hours and hours to edit. We did a family video last week for a family member's birthday, and we had probably about like everyone trying to play every instrument that was across 2 different households in 2 states. And we probably had about 16 tracks altogether. And that took our very computer savvy 16-year-old about 2 days to edit and cut together, just for one phrase of happy birthday. So if you want to do that kind of thing, it is a big investment. However, BandLab is the same but just audio. So what you could do is record a click track or get students to play with their metronome at the same speed, a particular song or excerpt or piece, and you basically get them all to create a login in BandLab. So you create your concert band or symphony orchestra or junior string ensemble BandLab page, and they can all record their individual tracks. And BandLab is basically an online digital audio workstation. So the students can see all of the separate tracks. They can line them all up together. Fantastic for big bands if you're working with big bands. If you can get the drummer and the rest of the rhythm section to lay down the first 3 tracks, then everyone else can fit their stuff in over the top. And you can create like what is kind of the closest thing we can get right now to a studio recording, with everyone recording their own separate audio track. So we've got some more questions just on here from Rachel. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for joining us. How to find ways around challenges some kids have being on video or interacting socially during online rehearsals but are keen to do the work. Yeah, fantastic question. So interesting thing happened to me. I was in a meeting yesterday, which was a large meeting, and I was not on video. And I've done heaps of video meetings over the last couple of weeks, and this was the first one where I wasn't on video. And I noticed even me as a fully developed adult with hopefully pretty good self-regulation, that I was completely disinterested in this thing, and it wasn't being designed to be interactive. So I think what we need to make sure of, and I can probably do a better one of this on this call, is making sure that we're getting people to constantly be interacting with what we're doing. So let's say that you're on Zoom or on Teams or something visual, and the students are all got their own video, is asking them to do something physical to show what's going on. So if even something as simple as, okay, can everyone hear me? Or how did you go with that last activity? So that you can get a visual representation of how the students are going. On Zoom, you can also do, there's the thumbs up emoji and the clapping emoji. So even at the start of your first session, to say, okay, everyone, we're going to go through what all the different ways are that we can communicate on Zoom, for example. So can everyone look down the bottom and find their clappy hands emoji and show it to me now? And then you should hopefully see the whole screen populate with the clappy hands. Or can everyone show me right now that you can do raise a hand, which is in the chat function on Zoom. So if you kind of know what all the different interactive elements are of your platform, then you can integrate that into question asking. I think one of the other things that I know our teenagers have talked about is they are just dying to be really stupid and silly and mess around. So I think also giving students the opportunity to do that in a kind of controlled way. So, can everyone like pull a funny face right now? Or this week, everyone is going to turn up to rehearsal in a silly hat. Or this week, everyone is going to wear a particular color. Or can you hold up your instrument so close to the camera that it doesn't look like your instrument anymore? So giving them some kind of silly interactive things to do, I think, will also be useful. One cool thing that I saw on a Zoom meeting, again with people in video mode, was a whole class of people passing around a pencil. So they went like that, and then like the person got it, and then they went that way, and then that person got it. It was really, really cool. And I don't know how long that would take to set up, but that would certainly be a challenge that I think teenage kids would really enjoy. And if you're doing it with, they're not on video and they're on the chat, and I think it's about lots and lots of questions about asking them to interact with you on the chat, keep them engaged and motivated and part of the conversation. Or asking, putting the audio onto them, even if they're not on video, like saying, okay, we're going to go to Samantha now in the trombone. Samantha, can you answer this question, or whatever it might be? Or Samantha's going to play let them all know before it's going on, because they don't want to be surprised, especially when it's in this new format that we're all getting used to. You could tell them, okay, we're going to check that everyone is here right now. So maybe the way that you do the roll at the start of your lesson could be, I'm going to call out your name, and could you please play any 3 notes of your choosing? That'll be a really fun thing that all the kids will think is hilarious. And of course you will get the trumpet players trying to play the highest note they possibly can, and the tuba players trying to play the loudest note they possibly can. Will definitely distort the sound, and there will be 29 other kids laughing their heads off while you're taking the roll, which is probably a good start to an online lesson. So if you've just joined us, we're here talking about online ensemble teaching. I'm just going to have a drink. I'm Ingrid Martin, and we've got a question here from Scott. Scott's asking, I conduct a regional youth wind band. They travel hundreds of kilometres to rehearsal. Often they're the only musician in their school or their town. Yeah. The social experience is just as valuable as the music making. They get to be with their people. Any thoughts on how I can continue that incredibly powerful social connection and mental health outlet? Great question, Scott. And I think you're probably not the only one. And I know that there are certainly a lot of community bands that are in the same position, that really they're coming, this is their one musical outlet. They don't know anyone else that are musicians apart from the people in their community ensemble. So I think one thing is, again, we mentioned earlier in the call about kind of altering our expectations of what's going to happen this term. And I think part of that is knowing that this social part of it is really important, and that we're going to have to dedicate quite a lot of time to that part of things, probably well over the musical progression of the students. As we know, in like instrumental lessons, like one-on-one lessons or small group lessons, for a lot of those students, that's like the most close personal, meaningful interaction they have with an adult that's not their parents. And I think that's something that we really need to maintain throughout this time, where students are really stressed out. Everyone's home situation is different, and we're all experiencing different home situations. But this might be their one time in the week that they're really looking forward to, of being with their music mates. So again, finding some games that you can run, whether it's again with everyone on video or whether it's just audio. You might have to do a bit of setting up. So I know one thing that kids love is whenever you go on music tour or an excursion and you get them to number off, they love doing the numbering off. So I'm sure there's a way that you could, get them to find out or decide what their number is going to be in the numbering off, and that you do some kind of variation on the numbering off as just a little getting everyone involved. And that might be helpful for the question we had earlier from Rachel about needs to engage with each other in the online rehearsals. This could also be a really cool opportunity to get the students to interview each other. So putting a couple of students together and getting them to ask about their musical experience. So, how did you get into music? Who are musicians that you admire? If you had to recommend to me 3 YouTube videos that you love of your instrument, what would they be? And one thing I mentioned, which I think is in the ebook that I think a lot of people who are listening have got, which we'll put a link to, was the idea of even getting sections to work together. So they could be doing this on a text chat together or in a voice or audio or video call, of getting your section to do a group assignment together to make a playlist of their top 10 videos of their instrument on YouTube. And they might be super serious videos like Yo-Yo Ma playing Bach cello suites, or it might be, the 2 cellos playing Careless Whisper, or it might be some meme that is like 20 seconds long or something. But that will get the students to be able to really interact with each other and kind of get to know each other. So I think any opportunity for getting to know or social activities, I'm sure just even Googling there will be a lot of normal get to know you activities that you could adapt. And then a cool way that you could assess that knowledge would be to use a Kahoot, which we'll put a link to Kahoot in the chat as well. So Kahoot is basically like an online quiz software that kids absolutely love. And so if everyone kind of knew a whole bunch of information about everyone else in the band, then this would be a really cool way to kind of test that knowledge. Another piece of software that would be great to use, and you could definitely use it with your university students as well, is Poll Everywhere, which is pollev, POLLEV.com, which is an online polling software. And that's a really cool way to get heaps of information from a large group of people, and you can choose how it's displayed. So you might ask your ensemble, for example, who is your favourite composer? There might be lots of kids that don't have an answer to that yet, but or you might ask, who is your musical hero? And you can get that data to, for example, populate like a word cloud. You can get all of their little comments to pop up in different ways and disappears. And they can do that online, and then you can share your screen in real time with them, and they'll see all the results popping up. You could also do this if you're doing asynchronous rehearsals, so you don't have everyone in the space at the same time. You could still do a poll like that, and people should still be able to see the results of that poll after the poll has been finished. So hopefully that helped with your kind of getting all of these kids from disparate places to get together and kind of keep that social connection going. Yeah, Maddie's just said, I've been making sure all my students are on video all the time, otherwise they're off with the fairies. Yeah, absolutely. Even as us, it's really easy to just drop out our attention, as we know. We've got some more questions here. Lauren has asked, do you know how BandLab compares to Soundtrap in recording instruments or voices using mics or computer mics? My students loved putting stuff together by playing individual tracks into Soundtrap, but it was hard to marry up. So a really great, super easy tip for this is, let's say that hopefully your students are using a metronome or a click track, whether that be one that's provided in the app or they're just using like a metronome on their phone, is to give them a really clear instruction about what the count-in is going to be, and then making a really clear sound at some point in the count-in. So let's say it's a piece in 4/4 and we're going to do 8 beats count-in, that on the second one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, you're going to give a clap or some kind of loud sound. So if they're listening to the metronome or the click track, then it might be da, 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 da. Pa, 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 whatever it is, because as soon as you have everyone with that loud sound, and if it's all at the same time, all you have to do is line up all of those sound waves together, and you can just really easily click those tracks together. So that would be my suggestion for lining them all up. And then if you line up that point and then the other bits after don't line up, that's just because the students are not playing in time. So that's a whole nother thing, and that's a great learning experience. Like, you might get one and you're able to line it all up, and then things kind of go a bit funny, which is exactly what happens in our rehearsals all the time, to get them to have a listen to it and evaluate themselves. Because another thing that I think this time is a fantastic opportunity for us to do is get students to be better at listening and critical thinking. So a cool activity that would, again, tick a few boxes we've talked about tonight, like getting lots of different people involved, making students be really engaged with what's going on, is to play a YouTube video of a performance. You pick something that you know is going to be appropriate for your students, particularly an appropriate length. I probably wouldn't do something over 2 minutes at this stage, particularly with younger students. But get them to listen to the video, and even they could be doing live chat commentary to the video while they're listening, based on a particular question. So it might be, maybe you pick a video that's got really fantastic performance presentation. You know, the ensemble are really moving together, they're breathing together, they're really kind of showing the music physically. And get the students to comment on what they notice about how the ensemble physically shows the music. Or you might say, oh, like, get the ensemble to listen particularly for the balance. So, okay, we're going to listen to this video right now, and while you're listening along, I want you to be typing your comments about what you notice about the balance of the piece, and how easy or challenging is it to hear the melody at any one point in the music. And this would actually also be the opportunity to play some non-professional recordings. If you've got recordings of your ensemble from before all of this, that would be really cool. But even some other kind of school level or non-professional level ensembles, and not to be doing it in a judgy face kind of way, but to teach students to listen critically, because none of our ensembles sound perfect, and this is a cool opportunity to ask these really deep listening questions about, well, what happened to you? What happened to your attention as an audience member when something was a bit like when there were some moments of poor intonation? Or what happened to you? How did you feel as a listener when the rhythm was not together or it sounded a bit messy? Or what happened to you and your attention and your experience and your feelings when if you couldn't hear where the melody was, or you didn't really know what was happening in the music? So again, it's taking the students out of their little bubble, which is the kind of less experienced they are, the smaller the bubble is, and getting them to go out into the experience of being in the audience, and having a broader view of what an ensemble sounds like, and then talking to them and asking them questions about, okay, well, how is that going to change when you get next time in band, when we are all together? How is that going to change how you're going to play your part? And then if you were doing it with a piece that your ensemble was actually either working on or maybe something that you played last term, you could get the students to sit and play along in their own time outside of your rehearsal bracket, play along with the recording and try and do those things that you talked about. Have them write it in their part. Oh, well, the clarinets, I could really hear on the first recording that the clarinets had the melody, but on the other recording I couldn't hear the clarinets very well. So I better make sure that at bar 5 I listen to clarinets, and when I'm playing along in my saxophone part, I'm really listening for the clarinets when I'm playing along with that YouTube video. A few more questions here. From Rachel said, I got one of my orchestras last week to introduce one of their co-stars, which could have been a pet or a parent. That's an awesome thing to do. And I know in various towns around Australia, everyone's doing the teddy bears picnic at the moment. There's lots of teddy bears in windows. So I think right now, because lots of people are doing that, it wouldn't seem childish for a kid to go, even like a senior school kid or a university student, to go and grab their teddy bear and go like, oh, this is my co-star for today. Yeah, fantastic questions here. And you can see in the links to the Kahoot and the Polev. I've got one question for everyone who's out there listening right now, because we're probably going to finish up in a couple of minutes, is was this valuable for you? If it was, give us a like or put a message in the comments, because I'd love to know if you would like to do this again. Because I know that as the weeks and the days progress, we're all going to have more experience. We'll have more things that are working well. We're going to also have more things that didn't work we want to share with each other. And even once things are going well, I know that we're all going to have more and more questions. So give us your comments underneath about whether you would love to do this again. And if anyone's got any last minute questions, now would be a great time. Oh, awesome. Maddie's just said she's been writing down notes the whole time. Fantastic. I think if I was going to leave everyone with one last thing, it would be for all of us to look after each other and look after ourselves. I know that lots of people that have just started doing this for the last couple of days have finished their day of what is probably your normal time of like all day instrumental teaching, and then doing an ensemble either before or after school and being way more wrecked than you normally are. I've seen lots of wine emojis on Facebook at 4 p.m. the last couple of days. So I think it's really important that if you need a glass of wine or your glass of whiskey, cool, but that we also have some other ways to kind of look after ourselves at this time, whether that's having a nice bath or putting a candle on or trying to go for a walk outside, or just have a debrief with a willing person in your household, or maybe you just need to have a debrief yourself, and make sure that you are also physically looking after yourself. So last thing we're going to do now, just because I bet everyone has been sitting at the computer for a while, is can we just do all a stretch together? I can't see you, but I'm just going to hope that you're doing it with me. So reach up as high as you can go. And as you breathe in, I want you to try and breathe in, and you can do these with your students too, is to breathe in a way that you're going to try and expand the back of your ribs. Try and make the back of your ribs as wide as possible. And if you're putting your arms up, you might notice that your shoulders want to go up to your ears. So just try and let that drop down. And if you can interlace your fingers behind your back and give yourself a good chest stretch, because one of the things that we are doing a lot is sitting at a computer, and that really tends to help make us really tight in here and collapse over. Another good thing that you can do in between lessons or at the start and end of your day is just to even lie on the floor and just make sure that both of your shoulders are sitting back on the floor so that you can feel really good. So thanks so much to everyone that tuned in to our live Q&A. I'm so glad that you found the answers helpful. We will do this again, so make sure if you haven't already liked the Conducting Artistry page that you like it. This video will get saved on the page, so if you want to share it with any colleagues, you can. And just keep an eye on it because sounds like this is a great thing to do again, so we'll be doing it again. Just keep an eye on the page for announcements about that. And if you're not already on the mailing list, if you go to artistry.com and scroll down to sign up, you can sign up to the mailing list, and then you also get notification about the Q&As. Thanks so much, everyone, for a fabulous session. Have a good night. And if you need to have that glass of wine now, go and do it. Robin's just asked, is there a collective place where we can all pop in our ideas for interactive online games? I think, Robin, that you could put posts on the Conducting Artistry page, and if everyone else wants to go and look on there, it'll be under visitor posts. If you look on the left-hand side of the page, you can see there's that menu where it's got posts, photos, videos. If you put your post in there, and then everyone else can jump on and add their ideas as well. And please put stuff on there, because between us, we've got billions of ideas that we can all share, that we can all use. We don't have to all come up with everything ourselves. Thanks, everyone, and good night.